It is a pleasure to be here with you today, and what an awesome conference this has been so far. What quality lessons we have each learned to take home with us back to apply to our classrooms. Thank you for your ingenuity to bring in your own chairs. Don't you think we should give them a round of applause? Yeah, thank you. Excited and passionate about your work with paraeducators. And I hope the paraprofessional title is one of the reasons that drew your heart into coming to this session. Paraeducators, paraprofessionals are one of the least underserved when it comes to feedback and professional learning and targeted professional development. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is helping educators with that. So we are here today because we want to do what's right in this education revolution, in this engagement revolution. We want to do what's right for those paraprofessionals that we serve. In Kansas, and I was excited to hear our keynote this morning, we are moving away, due to the leadership of our commissioner and our State Board of Education commissioner, we are moving away from saying student achievement. Student achievement. Turn to your neighbor. What does that mean when I say those words, student achievement? Okay, I heard it. Shout it out. What's it mean? Test scores. Test scores. And notice on this slide, I say student success. In Kansas, we're changing our vision from that of student achievement and looking at test scores to looking at 5 factors. We're looking at cognitive, academic, technical, employability, and civic skills. So when we are working with our paraeducators, they are among that group that we need to transcend that message to and be sure that we are developing students for success, not just for a test score. We have to move to that time. Get acquainted. Wow, I was going to have you get up and move around. Do you think we can do that? No. So this is an engagement session. Don't know if you noticed, there are lectures and there are engagement sessions. So rather than have you move, I'm going to have you stand up. Stand up for me. That way you've been sitting a lot. I'm going to have you stand up instead of move. Here's what I want you to do. Shoulder partner up at your table. Get that done first. Shoulder partner up. Thank you. Raise your hands, yeah. Come on, teachers, look up front. Since I'm not on a stage, I will use the grinder hand signal. So when I raise my hand, when I put you out in talking groups, watch for my hand and just wait for others to get silent. So here's the first thing I want you to do. Introduce yourself and tell the person you've partnered with where you're from and what you do. And then, do you currently work with paraprofessionals? And if you do, what model do you use? And is it effective or not? And what barriers are you facing? With your shoulder partner, ask yourselves those questions. I just blended. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a chair. Thank you. Thank you. So let me tell you a little bit about myself so you can understand the perspective that I come with you to you today. I am a K-12 special education teacher. So I have worked with paraprofessionals as a special education teacher. I was also a middle school and high school teacher, and I had paraprofessional opportunities when I was in those positions. I've been a building leader at the high school level. I've been a district administrator, and now I'm a CEO at Southwest Plains Regional Service Center in Southwest Kansas. Who can say I took Kayla and I over here on the side, we came from Southwest Kansas. It took us 14 hours to get here, and we did not drive. Who can top that? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it took forever. We had layovers, etc. So I am in rural Southwest Kansas. Yesterday when you were introducing the distinguished Title I schools, it was amazing for me to hear about the wonderful things we're doing in small rural schools. And that's what's happening in Kansas as well. But I want you to know, as you look at that list, one of the most important things to me in my driving passion for education is my 4 granddaughters. And I had the opportunity to be with them this last weekend. And Ella, my oldest, is 5 and in kindergarten. And of course, she's the brightest child in the world, right? But I said to her, so Ella, tell me who's the smartest in your kindergarten class. And I was sure she was going to say, well, Nana, it's me. But no, she said, Nana, it's James. And I said, well, Ella, that's interesting. Tell me about James. And she said, well, this is his 2nd time through kindergarten. So there you go. There you go. What does Nana know? I'd like to connect with you. Please, as you're tweeting out today, tag me at Dr. Kelly from Kansas, and there's the hashtag for the conference. I bring this up because it's important as educators we get involved with Twitter. There are 5.2 million tweets a day in education alone. And if you use this hashtag, you can go back in the months to come and you can reflect on all of the comments and the things that you have learned and heard from the conference. So please tag me and hashtag the conference. Here's my team commitments, the table commitments I'd like you to make to each other. Attack this session with enthusiasm. Think about those paraeducators back at home and really join me in your enthusiasm for them. Learn, improve, and grow. You're going to get out of this session what you put into it, and then let's bring out the best in others around us. At your table, can you commit to those things with your table? Commit to those with your table. Somebody said all but the 3rd one. They're not going to bring out the best in others. So we are here today to talk about leveraging instructional support. Leveraging instructional support. And Simon Sinek's work, who's been looking into that? Simon Sinek, if you're not, write down that name. Simon says, start with the why. Start with the why, then move to the how, and then move to the what. Please take note. That's in our own passions, and that's how we should deliver lessons with our students. We should start with the why. So with that shoulder partner that you have identified, you can stand up or not, reflect back when you started in education, why did you get involved in education? Shoulder partner talk. Why did you get involved? Go get them. Yes. Great. Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you. Thank you. So as we think about this, paraprofessionals are one of the most overlooked, underutilized resources in our districts. They are a resource that we must commit to doing better at helping them serve the students that they're assigned to. I want to share a story, true story, and it was so impactful in my work in education. My daughter's senior year at Kansas State University, she had a couple of days a week that she did not have classes. So I suggested she get her substitute license and that she sub on those 2 days. So we were excited. She got her emergency sub. She was going to sub. I helped her create her, that sub bag so you can walk in and do the best you can. And she called me one day and said, "Mom, I got my first assignment." "Awesome, what is it?" "Early childhood special ed." Great. Let's adjust that bag. So anyway, she went. I was as nervous as she was, and she went and she called me at noon. And here's what she said to me. "Mom, there's 2 adults sitting at the back of the room talking. Who are they and what are they doing here? Talk at your table. Who were they and what were they doing?" Thank you. Welcome back. As you probably guessed, they were paraprofessionals who were assigned to that classroom. And there's no reason to lay blame here, but Jenny had no clue. That's one thing I had left off my checklist to talk to her about. You might have a para, and I should have. But she had no inkling from the school district that she was going to have a para. The paras didn't communicate to her, "We're here at your disposal, let me help you out." There was no communication at all. And remembering as I had a para and how empowered or lack of empowered that I felt in knowing exactly how and how could I work with the paras, and every para comes to you with a different skill set. So how do we handle that diversity and the variety of needs that they each have? So let's move on with Simon Sinek. Remember, we're going to move inside out remarkable thinking. So the why of what we're doing here today is to identify ways to take the most advantage we can of those additional humans to impact students, the paraprofessionals in our classroom that we want to use to the maximum, not just because we should financially, but because we need those additional hands touching the hearts of our children. So that's the why. The how is because we need to give paraprofessionals more quality feedback about the job they're doing, the expectations of the job that we have for them. We want to give them feedback, but then we also want to support them through collaborative dialogue. You heard that this morning. One of the strongest professional learnings that we can do is collaborative dialogue. That's the how. The what is an observation tool. I happen to be talking to you today about an electronic observation tool that we have, but it can be any observation tool. Just think about observations and the feedback that you can have, whether it's the e-walkthrough and what my book is about, or it's an observation tool that you self-create. The important thing is now the how we're giving them feedback on their instructional practice for improvement. Everybody needs a coach. Paras are no different. Everybody needs a coach. So our learning targets for the day is I want to talk to you about a high-quality observation system for paraprofessionals. What should that look like? So whether you design your own or use something you currently have, what tenets should that have in place? What does effective feedback look like? As educators, we learn this, we hear this, but just like me, if you've been involved in education 5, 10, 15, 25 years, sometimes you forget what quality feedback needs to look like. And your observation system should give you data. Should give you data. What I mean by that is I can remember 15, 20 years ago when I was doing a high school principal doing observations on teachers, I was so proud I had a triplicate form. Right? Who remembers those days? Raise your hand. Yeah. And I would do it, and I would leave it in their box. But in the end, I had no data. I didn't have anything that would tabulate what percent of cognition we had students at. What was the engagement level of the classes those teachers were serving? So now you need to be sure that your observation system can give you data so we can drive professional learning based on what that data says, and we can differentiate professional learning for paraeducators based on what that story is. Those are our objectives for the day. 30 seconds table talk about those objectives. Clarify them in your mind. Come. You want me facing? Okay, do this.
Talk about what that band.
Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you. Welcome back. Welcome back. So let's move on to our target number 1, tenets of a high-quality observation system for paraprofessionals. Tenets of a high-quality observation system. One of the first things that I think you should realize is it needs to be customizable. Every district has different priority instructional initiatives happening in their classrooms. You can't take one observation tool and apply it across our nation and get quality feedback. We have to differentiate based on those students you have. If you have a high poverty population, if you have a high ESL population, you're going to want to have ESL strategies on that observation tool. Compared to a middle class, all white, all English speaking, it's going to be a different look. So no, number 1, I think that you've got to have a customizable tool. So here's the things that I'd ask for. You need to identify as a design team on an observation tool, what are your look-fors? When I say look-fors, I mean what are the things that you want to see happening in every classroom, every day across the district that the paraprofessional should support and know and understand? What are the things you want to be happening K-12 in every classroom on a consistent basis that the paraeducator should support? Those are your look-fors. Those are your look-fors. Now, remember, you're going to have to be willing to provide them professional learning around those things. If it's going to be an expectation, you have to help them know and understand. So look-fors are important. Second, we have to have an understanding that this is formative feedback. Formative feedback. This is to improve their skill. This is to give them quality feedback to adjust their thinking and teach them more. This is not summative. The observation system is about helping them improve their instructional support to students. Not about gotcha, but about help ya. Not about gotcha, but about help you. And the snapshots, an observation system can't happen once a quarter, twice a year. It has to be snapshots of time. So observations are 3 to 5 minutes in length, but you get a number of them over time. A number of them over time. Each time, however, the paraprofessional receives feedback through the electronic system. So they don't wait. They get immediate feedback through an email about what you observed, what you saw, and then there should be a place where you could leave comments and probing questions for their reflection, followed by collaborative conversation. So look-fors, formative, snapshots. Okay, review that at your table. Look-fors, formative, snapshots. Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you. Here's what might happen if you don't have a common understanding and common vocabulary.
The Holy Spirit. Amen. I learned about God and what else?
Who else did you learn about?
God and Cheez-Its.
God
and Cheez-Its.
God and Cheez-Its. Do you mean God and Jesus?
No, Cheez-Its.
Oh.
Okay. That's what can happen. If we don't have a common understanding and the face of the tool, the look-fors of the tool, there should be a common understanding, 100% transparency with all paraprofessionals about what the items on the tool face are and what those mean in actual practice. What does that look like? What kind of support does that represent? And that's an important part of the professional learning. And when you do that, you raise the opportunity for those hands of that additional person to impact those students. Huge, huge piece of the puzzle. Here is an example of a tool face from a paraeducator tool in Kansas. It represents what they're doing in this district. As you take a look at that, you can see I do, we do, you do. Who's that? Anita Archer. Anita Archer's work. So they're doing some Anita Archer work. They're doing some Randy Sprick work. But that's just an example of a tool face. And when I said again, let me say it again, we have to be transparent with the professionals about the contents of this tool. If they're going to receive feedback on it and they go, I don't even know what I do, we do, you do means, we're not being fair. So we need to be fair. Okay, at your table, even if you're not with someone from your own school, identify what are the priority initiatives in your district that you might want to think should be on your paraeducator tool. Talk at your table. What items would you want on your tool face? If you could have a customized tool, what would that look like? Thank you. Let me invite you back. Thank you. The response, the conversation that each of you had to be different because each one of you has different instructional priorities within your district. One of the things I wanted to point out as you look up there, in Kansas, we are basing a lot of our work right now on the 5 R's framework. So you'll see rigor, relevance, responsive culture, and relationships. Our fifth R is results. But as you look at that, that's the reason this particular tool is set up in that manner, is to support the State Department's vision of those quadrants in our professional practice. So as you think about the tenets of a quality tool, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk to you just a second about growing instructional support. Growing instructional support. We must have a growth mindset. Carol Dweck's work, growth mindset. And at the roots of that tree, we have to know and understand that through quality feedback, through identified practices within the customized tool, that we can make a difference in the effectiveness in that para in the classroom. Our growth mindset has to permeate our belief that if we provide professional learning and feedback to paraeducators, they're going to get better. And I believe they can. At your table, would you share all the way around, currently, what kind of feedback do your paraeducators receive? Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you. Welcome back. So let's move on talking about the tenets of effective observation. Thank you. So you don't want the contents of your paraprofessional observation tool to be lengthy. We need to identify the fewest number of high leverage moves that will cause academic achievement impact. Let me say that again. You want to identify the fewest number of high leverage moves that you want your paraeducator involved in that will cause the most impact. So we want it to be brief. I said earlier that we hope that you can do the evaluation in about 3 to 5 minutes. 3 to 5 minutes. So if you have a 2-page tool, it's not going to happen. It needs to be brief. So when you're designing a customized tool, keep in mind brevity. Frequent observations, you've got to give feedback early and often. And I have a number of people say, so who does the observation? Is it the principal? Is it the teacher that's assigned? It can be a combination. It can be a combination. It can be feedback from all those parties. The important point is that they are receiving feedback, no matter who's giving that. Just like teacher observations, these observations should be unannounced. It's not something where you're going to say, okay, on Thursday at 3 o'clock, I'm going to do an observation. You want them to be unannounced. You want them to be unobtrusive. You don't want to interrupt the para in their work that they're doing with students, so you want it to be very unobtrusive. And again, I can't say enough that you've got to be transparent. Just like a teacher tool, we use teacher tools across the state of Kansas using this same method. Teachers should know the tool inside and out. It should be placed in front of them. Here's your observation tool. It's the same way with paras. And then the PD that collaborates with that should be provided. So collectively, this is a quote from my book, because you're going to do frequent observations, you're going to get a panoramic picture of the instruction that para is providing. You're going to get a panoramic picture because you're going to go in multiple times, short number of times, to see exactly the kind of support that's happening. So here's what we expect to happen. I like to use cogs because when you talk about cogs, think about that bicycle when you were little and the chain would come off because one of the chains got off the rail. I think that education is the same way. We've got to keep all our things in place in order for us and our system to be working collectively for students. So when we have instructional leadership and we have e-walkthrough with the feedback and the comments and the collective conversation, then we move to paraprofessional support, more walkthrough, more observation, more feedback. Then we end up with student success. And again, just think about that conversation I asked you to have just a second ago about what you're currently doing for paraeducators. And probably anything more that you would do is going to be significantly, because the paras that I served received very little feedback. Very little feedback. So research and best practice. If you access the handouts, this is handout 1. This is handout 1. Research and best practice says, what's the number one factor in improving student success? Talk at your table. Number one factor in improving student success. It's not a trick question. With who? With who? Very good. Thank you. Somebody shout out an answer. Shout out an answer. Relationships, and in particular with the teacher and paraprofessional they're working with. The number one factor in student success is the relationship with the teacher and the paraprofessional that they're working with. And believe me, there are paras that have more impact than any other. This is just a sidebar. It's awesome when I go in and do a teacher observation and there's a para in the room and I have to go over to the building principal and say, which one's the teacher? That's awesome when you do that. And there are many times I can't tell who the paraprofessional is and who the teacher is. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. So the number one factor in student success is quality of teaching, is the teacher relationships. What influences the impact of teaching is quality feedback. Quality feedback. Quality feedback only comes through reflection and collaboration that then leads to student success. So the research says, again, if we don't have quality feedback, we can't impact instructional practice. And I like the words the keynote speaker used yesterday, instructional fluency. Instructional fluency. We want to impact the paraprofessional's instructional fluency through the observation tool and feedback. That's what research says. Target number 2, effective feedback. Effective feedback. So let's just make sure you're following my story. We have a customized observation tool. We've designed it. We've got our targets on our tool. We know and understand now about observations and what we're supposed to do. But it doesn't stop there. Now we're moving to step 2, where your tool has to provide quality feedback for reflection for the paraeducator to think about. And then ultimately for collaborative conversation with the teacher about practice. Okay, so I'm moving on to step 2. We got the tool, it's designed, way to go. Now we're going to move on to reflection, feedback. We have to provide feedback because it's part of the growth process. So stand up, time for you to stand up. I know you can't move around. Share with your shoulder partner or a different shoulder partner at your table, what is a piece of feedback you've received in your educational career that you went, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Talk at your table. Piece of feedback you received. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sue would say me in the picture. Yeah, good. What time is it? What time is it? What time is it? Okay. Thank you. I invite you back. Thank you. Have a chair. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I want to give you an example of effective feedback and less effective feedback. Each of you has had an impact, I'm sure, on many students' lives. And as part of that, and it could be whether it's a graduation or a wedding, you've gotten a student a gift, right? And many times you get this letter that says, "Dear Mrs. G, thank you for the can opener. It is appreciated. Sincerely, blank," right? Gotten those? Or you get that letter that says, "Dear Mrs. G, thank you so much for the impact that you have had on my life. Your time and effort that you spent with me in the classroom means more to me than anything. Without you, I would not be where I am today. Thank you for attending my wedding." Which one do you want? Right? So which ones do your parents want? We are living in a world that we are in way too big a hurry, and we don't stop and give people the feedback they need when they do a good job. And people respond, adult or students, much better to feedback when it's given in little bits and they know that you appreciate them, right? Think about the feedback when you get back home Monday that you might give your paraeducator that would encourage and influence. I want to share a TED Talks at this time, a piece of it. This was a study done by Bill and Melinda Gates on feedback to educators. But I want you to substitute paraeducators into his thoughts.
Everyone needs a coach. It doesn't matter whether you're a basketball player, a tennis player, a gymnast, or a bridge player. My bridge coach, Sharon Osberg, says there are more pictures of the back of her head than anyone else's in the world. Sorry, Sharon. Here you go. We all need people who will give us feedback. That's how we improve. Unfortunately, there's one group of people who get almost no systematic feedback to help them do their jobs better. And these people have one of the most important jobs in the world. I'm talking about teachers. When Melinda and I learned how little useful feedback most teachers get, we were blown away. Until recently, over 98% of teachers just got one word of feedback: satisfactory. If all my bridge coach ever told me was that I was satisfactory, I would have no hope of ever getting better. How would I know who is the best? How would I know what I was doing differently? Today, districts are revamping the way they evaluate teachers, but we still give them almost no feedback that actually helps them improve their practice. Our teachers deserve better.
See very little feedback that helps us improve our practice. Not just good job, not just attaboy, not just way to go, not just thanks for being at the ball game last night, but I'm talking about feedback that's going to impact the quality of instruction of your paraprofessionals. Reflect on that video with your shoulder partner, please. Give you a chance to reflect and think about it.
What was the tail end of that sentence? We received very little feedback about.
For instruction, to improve our instructional practice. You know, so many of the teacher evaluations are arrive on time, dress professionally, which is important, but what about improving our instructional practice? Not in the classroom. Oh, yeah. 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 Thank you very much. Welcome back. Thank you. Thank you. Nudge your neighbor. Nudge your neighbor. Thank you. Thank you. I realize this video clip was about teachers, but I think if we substituted paraprofessionals, the data would even be more alarming. The data would be even more alarming about paraprofessionals. And here's the economics of it. At your table, take a guess. What do you think the state of Kansas, just state of Kansas, spends on paraprofessionals each year? I want guesses. Talk at your table and come up with a guess. Just so you know, I had no idea either. Welcome back. I had no idea either, so I had to call our deputy commissioner, CFO in the state of Kansas to get this out. What's some guesses? What do you think? I'm sorry? A fifth is what the teachers get? Okay. Somebody throw out a number. 50 million? Somebody else? 10 million? In Kansas, it's 75 million in hourly wages and 25 million in health care. Did you hear those numbers? And your state may be more likely than Kansas, and we're not ensuring that we're maximizing the use of these individuals in our school through feedback. I can't. 75 million in hourly wages and 25 million in health care. That came from our Deputy Commissioner, Dale Dennis. That is a huge economic factor in needing to be sure that we're maximizing the use of our paraeducators in our classroom, if nothing else alone. The newest research by Robert Marzano supports the observation work as well. So I'd like you to think back to your evaluation when you were a brand new teacher. And as I've trained this across the nation, I am horrified at the stories that I get about evaluation. And I know we're not talking evaluation, but just I'm trying to make my point. I've had teachers say, I was the drama teacher and my evaluation was based on how well I swept the stage. I received an evaluation and it had someone else's name on it, etc. That happened to somebody back here? No. So the newest research by Marzano, who we respect, says dollops of feedback have more impact than platefuls. He doesn't say platefuls, Kelly does. So our evaluation system, whether it's for teachers or for paraprofessionals, is done once or twice a year, and you get this document and you get this plate full of stuff. And as we were talking at this table earlier, sometimes it's about your dress and what time you arrive in school, but what did Bill Gates say? What feedback do you get to impact your instructional practice? So I would contend with Marzano's research that our paraprofessionals need dollops of feedback from you, the teachers that are overseeing them and partnering with them in collaboration to serve students, that they need bits of feedback at a time that the observation process can provide to steadily, with a growth mindset, change their instructional fluency to be better and better and better at their job, to support you and to support students. Dollops of feedback. Critical new piece of research from Marzano. Also want to bring in Hattie's research on actionable performance feedback. He says feedback is one of the highest indicators of change when you want a desired effect. A desired effect. Just to give you the information on Hattie's work. Sorry, just a second. Actionable feedback. If you have see the number up there of 0.79, 0.15 to 0.30 is a typical teacher effect size. 0.31 to 0.40 is above average. 0.41 to 1 is in the zone of desired effects. So feedback through the research has shown to cause change in a positive way. So we've got our tool, and now we're going to give feedback through the observation process in dollops, a little bit at a time. And I say apply this same thing to new teachers. When you're doing observations or you're mentoring a new teacher, don't give them 5 things to think about. Give them 1 thing to think about. Look at the things that they need to work on, paraeducator or teacher, and find 1 or 2 things that could really improve their instructional fluency. And let's focus on those and scaffold. Adults need scaffold just like students. We can't give them too many things to think about, and we need to provide scaffolding all along the way to improve their instruction in the ways that will better meet the needs of kids. Okay, I've talked quite a bit. Talk at your table. Talk at your table about dollops and actionable feedback. Talk at your table. Stand up if you need to.
Five minutes left.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. Let me invite you back. Thank you. Welcome back. So we're talking about a collaborative culture. When we're talking about the feedback, we have to have a collaborative culture with our paraprofessional, don't we? We have to have a culture of trust in order for them to be able, we've got to sit down, we've got to review the tool, we've got to go over it with them, we've got to be willing to discuss. I suggest that each time you do an observation, you leave at least 1 probing question for them to reflect on, following quality probing question script of start your questions with what or how, so they can reflect on their practice. But a collaborative culture is a necessary part of quality feedback to have impact. We've got to have that. So here's a mental model, non-linguistic representation, like Marzano says we need to have in our educational delivery. I think you have observation with instructional support in real time. We give actionable feedback. We get improved support all through the implementation of an observation tool. All through the implementation of an observation tool. In every classroom, in every building, in every day, there are individuals, there are paraprofessionals who need your feedback. If you don't give them feedback, they won't improve because they don't know. They don't know. Again, the paraprofessionals are coming to you with different levels of education, different opportunities that they have or have not in prior experiences. One of the best paraeducators I've ever had the opportunity to work with asked to take the Algebra 1 book home so she could study at night because she didn't pass Algebra 1 when she had a hard time. She was like our speaker yesterday, D in that work. So talk at your table. What paraprofessional feedback do you deliver now? And based on what you've learned, what changes will you make? Talk at your table. Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to move on to target number 3, leveraging the data. So let's review our story. Our story is we've created a customized observation tool with the priority instructional initiatives in our district. We've learned that we need to provide feedback in dollops that will cause actionable change in instructional fluency. And now, I also said at the very beginning, you need to have a tool that's going to deliver data that you can drive decisions around. So we're going to talk about leveraging the data. Leveraging the data.
David, you have one of the worst cavities I have ever seen. Okay, have a good day.
Aren't you gonna fix it?
Well, I'm not a dentist, I'm a dental monitor. I just tell you when you have a bad cavity.
It's bad. Lunch?
Oh, yes.
Where are you going?
Why monitor a problem if you don't fix it?
Now you're all laughing, but let me tell you how many times this happens in schools. As I go out across the state and we begin to talk about data for the school improvement process. In Kansas, we're calling that KISA. And I begin to talk to them about data. They said, oh yeah, we gave that test, but we've never looked at that data. MAP test, yeah, we never got that data back. I wonder where that data is. Really? So I show that to add humor, but I also want you to know that it is a predictor of what I'm seeing in districts. And we want to leverage an observation system that will give us data that then, as our keynote this morning said, we can differentiate professional learning based on what the data says. We can differentiate professional learning based on what the data says. So again, we want to have actionable feedback. So when we get this data, we'll know who needs coaching and mentoring and what type of coaching and mentoring do they need. Do they need support in behavior management? Do they need support in a particular instructional delivery? Do they need support in confidentiality? What is it they need help with? We can provide professional learning in targeted groups based on disaggregation of the data within the observation system. We can look forward to paras receiving feedback for self-reflection that then leads to collaborative dialogue and improve self-efficacy. One of the outcomes of implementing an observation system with feedback is para-educators finally go, I'm valued. Someone cares. I heard from my supervisor, I heard from my principal, and even if it's something they need to work on, they're going to believe that you care through the feedback. Here's some examples of what we have accomplished with some feedback. Dean shared some data, but we have 8.4 million data points that we can disaggregate for the state of Kansas, for individual districts, for individual buildings, that we can look at what professional learning needs need to happen to provide differentiated. We've talked about differentiated learning for students for years. Why are we waiting so long to do that for teachers and for paras? We don't all need the same thing, right? Okay, here's an example of the data that I wanted to show you from one individual school district. Let me do an explanation of this, and then I'm going to ask you some probing questions. So this is a school that I'm working with that's using the Bill Daggett Rigor and Relevance Framework. So give you a brief overview. Might be review for some of you. Quadrant A and B are low rigor. A is low rigor, low relevance. B is low rigor, high relevance. So it's your tech prep courses, that kind of thing. C is high rigor, low relevance. And D is high rigor, high relevance. So obviously we want to get to C. I'm sorry, we want to get to D. Pardon me, thank you. Somebody should correct me there. We want to get to D. So take a look at this. Is the system we have archives the data over time, so we can use it for our school improvement processes. Again, that's something you want to look into in a system you would choose. This is our 2012 data. So quadrant A, we're at 68%. Do you see that? And then look at 15-16 data. So here's my probing question to you. Did the professional learning that we provided the district happen? Is this enough information that we know we've made progress? If not, what additional information do we need? Talk at your table. Did we make progress? Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the conversation. So let's talk just first about the first graph, because I want to explain to you about that and where we had to go, because this is a school district I actually worked with. So when we started out utilizing the rigor and relevance framework, we were at 68% of our instruction pre-K-12. Pre-K-12. That was not enough data for us in 12-13 in order for me to make professional learning advice, because this is district data. This is district data. So we had to drill down into the data to see how were the 6 elementary buildings doing, how was the 2 middle schools doing, and how was the high school doing. Because what it ended up was the elementaries were doing fine. They had a high level of rigor and relevance, but the middle schools and the high schools did not. So we only provided professional learning to those teachers who needed it. And then when we disaggregated it farther, interestingly enough, it was the core teachers who needed more professional learning than the non-core. Facts, shop, music, applied courses, right? That are relevant and rigorous because we're applying or evaluating almost all the time. So when we offered the professional learning from 2012-13 to 15-16, we targeted that based on drilling down into the data in 12-13. not taking that data and going, oh my gosh, everybody needs professional development on rigor and relevance, because that wasn't the case. We can use this same kind of data with your paraprofessionals across your district. We can drill down into the data and determine who needs what professional learning in order to improve that instructional what? Fluency. Instructional fluency. So ultimately, this district did make gains. We went from 68% at quadrant A to 39%, right? So we did make gains. So we can say the professional learning did have impact. Of course, following that data, we do need to have the reflection and the conversation. If you leave that piece out, any of this that it's just like giving an assessment and not looking at the results. We design our tool, we give feedback, we do the data, then we have to talk about it. Then we have to design professional learning. Then we have to scaffold. And in particular, paraeducators are going to need to have significant scaffolding to improve. You may need to model, I do, we do, you do, to support their improvement. So we want to identify clear expectations through the front of the tool. We want to observe paraprofessionals, deliver actionable feedback, and leverage the data. That's the process that you need to really cause instructional change. When you're spending the amount of money you are in your state, we need to empower these individuals who come to us with little or no training to have higher impact. Reflect at your table.